The 90s era of basketball was the beginning of the explosion of the NBA across the country and internationally on a worldwide scale. The 90s were one of the first moments the NBA captivated the hearts of many basketball fans that loved the sport. The greatness from that era led to the amazing talent that we now witness in the present era of NBA basketball. From Michael Jordan, Hakeem, Ewing, Barkley, Drexler, and so much more legends. But there were many more players in the 90s that contributed to what made that decade so special. Without further ado, let's take a look at some of the forgotten stars that will be just as dominant in today's era of basketball. Let's start off with one of my favorite players from the 90s, Reggie Miller. Reggie's one of the greatest shooters to ever play in the NBA, retired in 2005 as the NBA all-time leader in three-pointers made. Playing his entire career for the Indiana Pacers, Reggie would average 23 and 3 on 48% shooting from the field and 40% from 3 in the 90s. Along with great efficiency, Reggie was able to elevate his game in the playoffs when his team needed him the most. He once scored 8 points in 6 seconds in the playoffs against the New York Knicks on the road in a comeback win no one saw coming. He was an efficient, deadly sniper that knew how to get a shot off the standstill catch or coming off a screen. Not to mention, he's one of the best trash talkers in the NBA and knew how to get under everyone's skin. Ask MJ. Reggie in the 90s made the All-Star team only 5 times and made an All-NBA team 3 times as well, which in hindsight wasn't enough of a player of his caliber. Reggie's ability to stretch the floor and knock down the 3-ball at a consistent rate will make him so useful in today's game based on spacing and long-range shots that I think he will still be just as good as he was in the 90s in 2022. Penny Hardaway is a player whose career was cut short due to injury but was immensely talented. Penny was a player we had yet to ever see when he was drafted by the Orlando Magic in 1993. A 6'7" guy who could run the show at point guard but also had an all-NBA level scoring ability along with crafty athleticism and the frame to guard multiple positions. Throughout the 90s, Penny would average 18, 6, and 5 with 2 steals a game while shooting 47% from the field. After making the 1994 All-Rookie First Team, Penny would make 4 straight All-Star appearances along with 3 All-NBA selections as well. This would include a trip to the 1995 NBA Finals with his partner in crime, the Big Diesel, Shaquille O'Neal, beating the Reggie Miller-led Pacers and the Michael Jordan Bulls to reach the finals, where they would lose to the Hakeem Olajuwon-led Rockets in 4 games. Penny would have his career cut short due to multiple knee injuries in the 2000s, but this guy was ahead of his time. The league now caters to long body wings that can do a multitude of things on the court, and Penny was one of the first few players we had ever seen with his size and frame have the ability to have a wide range skill set. Big man feasted in the 90s, and one of those guys was Shawn Kemp from the Seattle Supersonics. Kemp was a super athletic high flyer for the Sonics in the 90s who lived around the rim and was a glass cleaner when the ball was loose. If you love Zion Williamson or prime Blake Griffin, then Shawn Kemp would have been your favorite NBA star in the 90s. Kemp in that era averaged a double-double of 18 and 10 along with 2 assists a game while shooting 50% from the field. Kemp is one of the greatest players in Sonics history with his two-way capability and long-tenured greatness for the franchise. While posterizing defenders, Shawn from 1993 to 1998 would be top 10 in defensive win shares for 6 years straight in the NBA. He was a solid defender alongside Gary Payton, one of the greatest defenders in the NBA at the time, and both would lead the Sonics to the 1996 NBA Finals, where they would unfortunately lose to the Chicago Bulls. Though he wasn't a threat from the perimeter, Kemp was an active rebounder and was virtually a lob threat at a moment's notice if the defense was playing too aggressive. Teams today feed up the pick and roll, and having a player who can do damage at the dunker spot or in transition while being one of the best rebounders in the game would still leave a positive impact even if the outside shot isn't in your repertoire. Like I said, injuries suck as we all know, and it stopped us from seeing the true potential of Grant Hill in his early part of his career. Grant Hill at 6'8", 225 pounds was a forward with guard-like skills and could use his athleticism to impact the game similar to LeBron James. Many compared pre-draft LeBron to Grant Hill with the skill set they both shared. Drafted in 1994, Grant would literally come into the league as one of the best players from the jump. He would win the 1995 Rookie of the Year award and would also make the All-Star team in his rookie season. He would go on to make 5 All-Star teams in the 90s along with 5 All-NBA selections as well. Grant averaged 21, 6, and 8 on 48% shooting from the field, and he's the only player in that era to average 20 points, 7 assists, and 9 rebounds for one season. Even crazier, he's the only player in the 90s to have multiple 20-point, 6 rebound, and 6 assist seasons, which he did 4 times. Grant Hill is literally one of the biggest what-if stories in NBA history, and like a lot of guys with great potential, injuries can ruin it all. But Grant was the guy many people thought would carry the torch once MJ retired, and from his play in the 90s, it certainly looked like he was going to. Grant would still have a solid NBA career, but if he was able to stay healthy, he would have dominated the NBA, and with his abilities, they would have translated well into this era of basketball. Before I continue, if you're enjoying the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and turn that post notification bell on so you never miss when I upload. Besides all that, let's get back to it. Like I said, I gotta show love to the big man back then, and Dikembe Mutombo was one of the greatest interior defenders in NBA history. Not only is the Congolese-born player a dominant defensive presence, but he also was a pioneer for the international wave of NBA talent that we've seen. Dikembe averaged a double-double of 12 and 12 while contributing nearly 4 blocks a game throughout the 90s. He was a legit defensive anchor and rebounding machine that altered shots that came within his vicinity. Despite not winning the 1994 Rookie of the Year award, Dikembe, like Grant Hill, made the All-Star team in his rookie season. He would go on to make 6 All-Star teams, 4 All-Defensive teams, and 1 All-NBA team as well in the 90s. Not to mention, he'd be a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner and would win 1 more Defensive Player of the Year award in 2001. Dikembe didn't need to shoot to make his impact felt, and I think many NBA analysts would say because he lacked that ability, he'd be limited in today's game. But Dikembe would be the best rim protector and rebounder in today's game and could anchor defense by himself with his defensive IQ and prowess. If you love the shooters, aka Steph, Dame, then let me introduce you to Glen Rice. Glen was a sharpshooting marksman in the 90s with the ability to get a bucket as well. Through the 90s, he averaged 25 and 2 while shooting 46% from the field and 40% from 3 on only 5 attempts a game. At 6'8", Glen can stretch the floor and also had the ability to work in the post against smaller players that tried to check him. He would also make 3 All-Star teams and 2 All-NBA teams throughout his tenure in the 90s, showcasing his offensive talent. Though he played for 2 new expansion teams in the Charlotte Hornets and Miami Heat, who weren't always the best teams, he was still one of the better wings in that era, and his game would be the perfect addition to any team in the NBA currently. G-Money would be a great floor spacer along with the fast pace of today's game. It would be a beautiful sight to see him move off ball and in different actions in the post to create mismatches against the defense. And lastly, my last player who I think needs to be mentioned is Mitch Richmond. Many younger NBA fans may not know about Mitch, but he was one of the best scorers in the 90s. And if you are an older fan, then you know of Mitch's first 3 years in Golden State, where he was part of the Big Three alongside Tim Hardaway and Chris Mullin, known as Run TMC, and won the 1989 Rookie of the Year award. But once he left Golden State and was playing in Sacramento, he grew into a talented offensive threat in the league. Mitch Richmond, aka The Rock, averaged 22, 4, and 4 on 46% shooting from the field while shooting 39% from 3. He'd make 6 straight All-Star teams, would make 5 All-NBA teams in the 90s as well. Though he would make the playoffs only twice in the 90s, he wouldn't average less than 20 points per game through 1989 to 1999, all while maintaining great efficiency as well. With size and strength at 6'6", it'd be very interesting to see Mitch play basketball today, knowing he was a pure, efficient scorer. But you guys have seen the players that I've mentioned, and best believe there are so many players in the 90s that have translated well to the current state of the NBA today. What do you guys think? Let me know which players from the 90s you'd love to see play in the NBA today, and who would perform well. This video took a lot of research and time, so I'd appreciate if you left a like as well on the video, and be sure to subscribe and turn that post notification bell on so you never miss a video. Until next time, stay on beat.